Okay, so hello viewers. So far, 9 people have joined us. I welcome everyone, and let us know if you can see us and hear us properly. Just give us a thumbs up if you can see us and hear us properly. Okay, great. So thank you so much for joining Prakruthi. So
Pleasure.
we are going to start now, and thank you so much for joining everyone. So far we have 10 people with us, and I'll be starting with a brief background of the book Story Through My Eyes. Then I'll be giving your introduction, and then we will move on to the questions.
Sure.
Okay, so hi viewers, let me tell you a brief about the book Story Through My Eyes. So it is the 9th anthology by Spark Igniting Minds, and basically Story Through My Eyes. This book is all about the story, the mythological stories that we have been hearing since our childhood, but the stories from different perspectives of different characters. We know Ramayana from the perspective of Sri Ram, Sita ji, maybe Hanuman ji. These are the main characters of Ramayana. But we might not know the journey of Ravan's wife Mandodari. What were her emotions? What was her role or her perspective in the story? So there are so many other mythological stories, and when we hear about these stories, for example, Mahabharat, we know the emotions or the storyline and the journey of the main characters like Arjun. We know Arjun very well, but we might not know, for example, Takshaka, who was a snake, a Naga, the king of Nagas. So these are the characters which are very significant in bringing the conclusions to these stories that we have been reading. It's very important to know their perspective as well, and we might, even if that person or that role character is a negative character, we might as well learn something from that character's life as well. So that is this book. This book is all about that. There are so many different characters. It has 19 chapters and written by different authors, and in this series of interviews we are going to interview all of them one by one. We are going to interview the authors, and I'm so glad to share that Prakruthi ma'am is the first one that I'm interviewing for this book. We are starting with you, ma'am, so I'm so glad.
Okay. Yeah. So before we go on, I would like to thank Spark Igniting Minds because from my childhood I've been writing poems, stories, but it was always for my close circle. I always wanted to publish one, but somehow it didn't happen. And my journey as a published writer has started with Spark. I know it's a long way to go, but the first step is always important, and Spark gave me that opportunity. So I would like to thank Spark, and thank you for having me as the first author in this series. I'm sure this will be great, and I'll be looking forward for the other interviews as well.
Sure, and I'm so glad to hear that from you, ma'am. And I would like to give a brief introduction of Prakruti, ma'am, and then we'll start with the interview and where I'll proceed with the questions. Okay, so Prakruti is an English lecturer. Writing both in Kannada and English has always been her interest. She uses her writing not just to express herself, but also to bring in new perspectives and to discuss issues of everyday life. Her interest in myths has always fueled her research in the field of mythological novels. She is also a member of the textbook committee for BA Communicative English, Bangalore City University. So welcome to the show, ma'am, and I'm so
Thank you,
glad
ma'am.
to have you here with me. And
Thank you.
can we
Thank you.
proceed with your
Yes.
can we proceed
Yes.
with the interview?
Yes, please.
Okay. So before we proceed, I would like to give a brief introduction about this particular chapter that ma'am has written. So it's from Mahabharata. The basic background of the story is Mahabharat, as you have always known. And basically, you all know the straight storyline of Mahabharata. The Takshaka is the main character of this story, who is the king of Nagas, the snake, the king of the snake community, basically. And he is someone who is responsible for, and his mission is to protect the species, his own species, and animals and forest. He was the king of Kandavaprasta, a place called as Kandavaprasta. He was a king of that place, and he considered its main mission of his life to protect that place, animals and forest and everything. And then it was the Pandavas actually intruded, and they wanted to build Indraprasta over there, which was right from our perspective, but from his perspective it was a big injustice. So this is the main storyline of this chapter that we are going to discuss today, and I would like to ask you the first question, ma'am, if you allow me.
Yes.
Okay, so as I was reading the story yesterday, I could literally feel the pain of Takshaka and actually understand his perspective. It was really very nicely written. So how did you come up with this concept of rewriting this story from Takshaka's point of view?
As I have already told, I have always been intrigued with myth and mythologies. I mean, I grew up in a Brahmin household, listening to stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, and it has stayed with me. So mythology is something I was always attracted to. And later I took up reading, I took up literature, I have done my master's in English. So that also gave a lot of other openings, it told me that it's not always black and white, there is gray as well. So things changes when you see it from different perspective. So this was an idea that I developed over the time, through my readings, through my experiences, through my journey in life. So when I came across this story of Kandavaprasta, I have read it so many times before, but when I read it recently, it stuck to me that something is not right. How can somebody destroy an entire forest only because they had to build a kingdom for themselves? And so I wanted to understand what would be the perspective of the animals. So even now when I watch movies or when I read stories, I always think from the neglected character. If some hero is fighting and there are 2-3 people who get hit because of hero's fight, I will be like, what would they feel? No, yeah, we are enjoying heroism, everything is fine, but what would they be feeling? How would their life get affected? So this keeps running in my mind, trying to understand what the other person is feeling. And when I read the story recently, that stuck to my mind, and there is a beautiful chapter for second PUC students. I teach PU and UG. So there is a beautiful chapter for second PUC students, and that is titled how I learned everything from the forest. It's written by an ecologist called Vandana Shiva. So when I teach that story and when I talk about importance of ecology, importance of having justice for every species around, having everybody in mind, not just the humans, but keeping every other species in mind. When I was teaching them, I also questioned myself, how much are we doing in our life? I'm telling students all this correct, but am I practicing it in my own life? Am I making my decision, keeping everything this? So it was kind of more of a reflection on my end. It's okay to teach, it's okay to stand in front of students and tell something. When you go back home and reflect, it ignites something in you. It ignites your mind, and that's how my whole idea of writing through the neglected characters came in. And when Spark announced that it want to publish an anthology called Story Through My Eyes, that was like the right opportunity for me. I always wanted to write, but I never ventured. I never started writing. But then when it announced that it is bringing up an anthology, I thought, okay, this is the time and I have to talk. Actually, initially I thought of so many characters, but then somehow Takshaka had always been bothering me. That story of Kandavaprasta being burnt so that Dharmaraya can have his kingdom built. That story had always stuck in my mind, and the character of Takshaka was there in my mind for a very long time. So I thought, okay, probably this is a right opportunity to write. And as I started writing, so many things came in. So I was very clear that I don't want people to judge whether it is right or wrong. I wanted people just to understand the pain of Takshaka, because this is my version of the story. The beauty of mythology is there are so many versions. We don't know which one is the right one and which one is the invented version. We don't know. So this is my version of the story, and all I wanted to tell is all I wanted people to understand is the pain of Takshaka, the agony he goes through, and through that I wanted them to understand that when we make decision, it's important to keep other species in mind too, because all our decisions are human. So that's how I was inspired to write this.
100%, I think, and you have been actually successful in doing that for the purpose that you were writing. I think that has been fulfilled, because I was actually reading it and I could literally feel that what was the agony of Takshaka.
Thank you.
That brings me to the next question. There are two more characters which are just referred in this story. Takshaka, his brothers. So could you please tell us more about the brothers of Takshaka, Sheshnaga and Vasuki?
Yeah, actually, according to the stories, somewhere it is mentioned that Takshaka has 8 brothers. Somewhere it is mentioned he has 1,000 brothers. As I told, stories from the mythology differs, with every teller. So the most popular version is that he has 9 brothers. 9 siblings totally. 1 sister and 8 brothers, and out of them, Sheshnag is the eldest. Second is the Vasuki, and then comes Takshaka. And all of us know Shesha and Vasuki because we worship these Nagas. Shesha is the bed on which Lord Vishnu is supposedly sleeping, and Vasuki is the snake that was used during the Samudra Mantana, and that is the snake around the Shiva's neck. So whenever we worship Vishnu, whenever we worship Shiva, these 2 snakes have always been part of our worship as well. Then comes Takshaka. First of all, most of them don't even know Takshaka is brother of these 2 Nagas. We don't even know that they belong to the same family. The popular opinion on Takshaka is that he is the villain who killed he's the negative character. He's the villain who killed the king Parikshit. That is all we know of Takshaka. So as I was reading more and more Takshaka, there was a point in my mind that I grew up listening to these stories. I grew up reading these stories, but I didn't know that Takshaka was the family member of Vasuki and Sheshnag. So I'm sure many others also don't know. Okay, so that was something I wanted to bring in. And also the question of, though they belong to the same family, though they are the sons of the great Kashyapa Muni, they are the sons of the same sage, but these 2 have been worshipping. These 2 have been worshipped for a long time, but Takshaka is not worshipped anywhere. It's considered negative. Why so? When they belong to the, not the case with Pandavas. All 5 belong to the same family, and all 5 are given same respect, and they are the heroes. But when it comes to these Nagas, only 2 brothers out of 9 are worshipped. Others are not worshipped everywhere. Probably there are sects here and there which consider them as God, but not everywhere in our culture. So that was also something which I wanted to explore in the story. And that's the reason I got in those references.
Right. Those references were really nice, because even I came to know yesterday that they all belong to the same family. And actually, Mahabharat is all about that. Even the Kauravas and Pandavas belong to the same family, but they are different because of their karmas and what their thought process and what they wanted in life. What were their mission? They were different. In the same way, I think Takshaka and Sheshnaga and Vasuki were different in the same way, maybe.
And one more thing was, this happens in our lives too. we have siblings, we all belong to the same family, but we all don't achieve the same things in life, right? So why
True.
is the question all of us keep asking? Why is my sister able to do that? I'm not able to do that, or why is my brother able to do and I am not able to do? And sometimes there is no answer for why, because in future what happens we never know. We all will get what is written in our due. We all will be given that, but we have to be patient for that. So somewhere this connected to the real life examples that we see around as well. So that's the reason I wanted to explore that aspect in the story.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot reveal too much, but that particular part of the story where you are discussing about the destiny and the karma, that was the main highlight for me actually, and I love that part the most. And
Thank
that brings me to the next question. That Takshaka actually felt this revengeful. The moment he came to know that okay, my territory is in danger, he came in this mode of defense and revenge and everything. But what if he thought of surrendering to Pandavas? Do you think that Pandavas would have shown compassion to the snake community, and Pandavas would have allowed them to coexist with them in
Okay.
the Indraprasta?
Yeah. This also I've explored in the story. There is a part where Takshaka ponders on this. Should I surrender? And then he reasons with himself and he says, I might surrender. They may allow me to live, but they will definitely cut down the trees. So it's not just about Snake and his tribe, Takshaka and his tribe. He is not just fighting for him and his tribe, but he is fighting for the entire forest, which consists of trees and birds. And since they want to urbanize it, since they want to build a palace, it is inevitable for them to cut down the trees. And once the trees are cut, their ecosystem is lost. Where do the snakes live if there are no trees around? So even if there is palace is for humans. You can cage a bird, but the bird will never be happy in the cage, no matter how beautiful the cage is, or whether the cage is made up of gold or diamond. A bird needs trees around them, right? Even the snakes, they need their ecosystem.
Right.
So there is a part where Takshaka ponders on surrendering, but then he stops thinking that they may show compassion to me and my followers, but they will definitely cut down the trees. They will definitely kill other animals which are not useful to them, right? Even in animals we are very choosy.
Mm-hmm.
We protect animals which are useful to us, and we are bothered about animals which we consider not useful. So that section is also, so that's the reason in the story I saw it like there was no point in surrendering to the human. And why should they give up to the human power? Why should they surrender to the human power? It should be the other way around. We humans should surrender to the nature rather than nature surrendering. I don't think it made any difference.
100%.
Kandavaprasta would have been destroyed irrespective of whether Takshaka would surrender or not.
Right. Right. Okay. Then that makes complete sense. Okay, let's continue. I'm really sorry to our viewers because of some network issues. It got disconnected. Let us continue this interview. We were on a very interesting part of the interview where I was asking ma'am that why do we worship snakes in India? And yeah, you can continue answering that.
Yes,
Ma'am.
as I was saying, there are stories which say snakes are gods or it is associated with different gods like Shiva and Vishnu. But I think the basic reason behind worshipping snake or any other animal is that so that we don't kill them. Right? We humans, we think the entire earth is for us alone and we want to take control of everything. So as long as we believe that there is God in different animals and plants, we protected them. But now, in the name of modernity, in the name of scientific thinking, somewhere we know that there is no God in a snake or something. We believe that there is no God anymore, and that's why we don't mind killing them, right?
Hmm.
So there was fear associated with this worship, and that
Right.
stopped us from harming the nature. But now, in fact, they say that before Hinduism there was nature worship. All we thought
Right.
as God was these five Panchabhutas. Nature was God. And that's how even Hinduism also talks about different animals. And that's why there is story for each and every animal, probably. Even
Hmm.
today, why are we trying to protect cows? it's because we believe it's God. Right?
Right.
I mean, people eat meat of different animals, but when it comes to cow, it becomes an emotional, religious issue because we believe it is God. So as long as we believe there is God, or animals are associated with gods and nature is associated with God, we protected them, and that's the significance, according to me. I mean, people might disagree, but to me, why is it important to worship these animals? Is that in the name of worshipping, at least we will protect them, we will not harm, and at least in that way, the nature, the ecology is maintained. Otherwise, I mean, we are seeing the result now.
Right.
The deforestation, extinction, many animals and plants are getting extincted. Uh, we don't find many animals anymore now. So that can be stopped if we think they are animal. There is God in these animals and plants, so that we will protect them.
Yeah, 100%. I would comment on that. But before that, I think Sana ma'am commented that she cannot hear us. However, I can hear you and see you properly. So,
Okay.
Sana ma'am, please give us a thumbs up if you can hear us properly now. We'll be waiting for that. If you can tell us, if you can just tell us again that you can hear us, because I was able to hear you and your answer very clearly. And it was recorded very
Or we
clearly.
can ask other viewers if they can hear us. I mean, it might be
Right,
problem
other
with
viewers
one.
also let us know. Just give us a thumbs up if you can hear us and see us clearly. And then we would proceed. Yeah, and from what I could gather from your answer, that point, I definitely agree to that thing 100%. That before God, of course, we worship God, but these Panch Mahabhutas, they are we are surrounded by it. Our
Danger.
life is actually run by it.
Yes.
So before worshiping God, we definitely have to worship Panch Mahabhutas, and I definitely agree to it. And we got, I think, thumbs up from our viewers. They can hear us. And okay, moving on to the next question. That this question has always I was always curious to know this, that any mythological character who is a villain you see, like for example Kans, Krishna's mama. So it takes birth from fear. He had fear that Krishna would kill me, and
Yes.
these characters take birth from the feelings like fear or revenge or anger or ego or something like that. So what are your thoughts on dealing with these feelings? Because these are just characters. I'm sure every human being, some or the other way, go through these feelings and in some point in their life.
True. I mean, without emotions, we are nothing, right? Firstly, I'm no mental health expert to comment on how to handle these emotions, but I can only talk on how I learned or how I think is the right way. As you said, all of our reactions all depends on our emotion. We are made up of emotions, but what makes us different from animals is the way we react to it. Even animals have emotions, but they don't think twice before reacting, but we humans can think before our reaction, and that's what makes us different from the animals. And on how to handle these emotion, I think the first step is to accept that we have these emotions,
Mm.
because most of the times when we ask people, why are you so great today, why are you so dull, they say, I don't know, I'm just not in mood. What does not in mood mean? Is it boredom? Is it sadness? Is it, what emotion is that to say not in? So most of the times we don't know what is our emotion. So to
Mm.
understand what our emotion is, I think is the first step in handling that emotion. And then why comes in, why am I bored? Why am I sad? Okay. So, but off late, unfortunately, we are so busy in the race of life that we don't stop to think about ourselves and our emotions, right? People are talking about mental health because some celebrity like Deepika Padukone, spoke in public. We are talking about it, but we are not doing much about it.
Mm.
All of us talk, but what do we
I
do?
totally
And I think
agree to that.
that's where stories come in. right? Stories is a way of, when we see a hero struggling on screen, we cry with the hero because we relate to that emotion,
Yes.
right? When we read a story, I mean, you said you could understand the agony of Takshaka, so that's where those stories come in. It helps you understand emotions, it helps you deal with those emotions. For example, both Ekalavya and Karna, they are from the same epic Mahabharata. Both were victims of caste discrimination, but the way Karna
Hmm.
reacted and the way Ekalavya reacted, so Ekalavya becomes the hero, right? Ekalavya. Today we have dramas and poems written on Ekalavya. Of course, Karna is also considered hero, but he took the negative side. He
Right.
sided with the Kauravas. So emotions are same for all of us. Situations are
Hmm.
same for all of us. But how do we handle them? How do we respond to them? Is what makes us what we are. And I think that is where stories come in. So when we read these stories, when we read about Karna and Ekalavya, we understand, yes, we have two or more options of reacting. What is
Hmm.
right and what is wrong, we need to learn from these characters,
Yes.
right? So every character in our mythology is
Hmm.
teaching us about one or the other emotion. As you said, yes, Kansa is Kansa because of the fear he has. So every
Right.
character is telling us about one or the other emotion, and that is where
Hmm.
stories play an important role. And that's why it's important to read, or at least engage in such conversation through our stories.
Yes, 100% can't agree more. And because everybody, there comes the question or the thing of choice. Everybody have similar situation, but what their destiny becomes is based on what choice
Exactly.
they made at that
Yes.
particular point in time. For
True.
example, if Kansa would have not feared that thing, and if he would have become like the true like elderly person for Krishna, I don't think so. Krishna would have killed.
No,
Krishna killed
and
because
if
of
you see,
his
the prophecy said that uh, sorry, sorry to cut you off, Shruti, sorry for that. But if you see, the prophecy said that the eighth child will kill Kansa. So there was no need for him to kill the first seven children, right?
right.
So it makes you think what made him do that, what made him act in such a manner. And through these stories and through these characters, probably we can also reflect on our own emotions, our own actions, and that's why these stories are important.
Exactly. That's why it is important. Yeah. I cannot hear you. Can you just readjust the voice? Can you just
Am
I
I,
could not
am
get
I
the
not?
last sentence.
Hello?
Now I can hear you. Now
Yeah,
I can hear
yeah,
you.
no. So
Yeah, exactly. That
I
is
was
what
saying that
makes it.
when we read these stories and when we think on the characters, it's also like reflecting on our own emotions and our own decisions, and that's why our epics are great, and it's important to read our stories.
It is 100%. Can't agree more on this answer. Right. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, so that brings me to the next question. As I was reading the story yesterday, I discussed that story with my siblings, and they said that they heard the story of Takshaka when they were in probably fifth or
Okay.
sixth standard, and they had this textbook on mythology. So my brother told me that he enjoyed the story of Takshaka, and even in the visual scenes, the episodes of Mahabharata, he
Mhm.
totally enjoyed the story of Takshaka. So I think children are going to love this story when they read it. So I'm sorry again, the network might is maybe. Can you
No,
hear me?
I mean, yeah, yeah, I'm able to follow you.
Okay, so yeah, children are going to love this story. So,
I
any
hope
message
so.
for the parents as to how do they develop the reading of, like the habit of reading in their children in this era of touch screens? Because it's very difficult to do that these days.
Yes, yes, I know. I mean, I agree with you because I teach PU and undergraduate students, and I am seeing that there is, the habit of reading is somewhere. lost. But I'm also hopeful because I also see the younger generation. My niece and nephews, they are hardly 7 years, 8 years, but they are picking up Harry Potter. They are reading our mythologies. So I'm sure that this habit of reading can be inculcated in the students, I mean, in the younger children. I'm hopeful of that. To answer on how, probably the best way is that parents read first, because children don't hear what you say. I mean, I myself have a 2-year-old daughter, so I know that she doesn't listen to me, she just copies me, right? So whatever I do,
Okay.
she copies the same. Instead of telling 100 times read a story, you pick up a book, sit next to them, and it's okay if they are not listening to you, just keep reading. If they see you keep reading, they will also pick up the habit one day or the other. That is one thing. Second, tell stories. Start with telling stories like bedtime stories, or when you are giving them bath or giving them, feeding them food. Start telling stories, because all of us, all humans are addicted to stories. No matter
100%.
what we Shruti, am I audible? There is
Yeah.
some network issue, I guess. No?
Are you able to hear me? Because
Yes, yes.
I can
No.
hear you.
Okay. So all our conversation starts with a story. You know what happened yesterday. That's how our conversations are. So we love stories. So probably we can start with telling the stories. Unfortunately, in the situation of nuclear families, we don't have, not everybody has grandmothers, grandfathers who can tell the story. Like I had most of the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata, I got to know from my grandfather. Unfortunately, that's not the case today. So it becomes the responsibility of the parents to
Exactly.
tell them
Hmm.
stories. We can also pick up on what do they like. For example, one child might be interested in animals. In that case, we have to use animals in the story.
Hmm.
Other child might be interested in space. Then use stars and moon in your story. Bring in the characters that they are interested in. At the same time, I also want to tell each child is different. I might like
Hmm.
reading, my sister might not. I mean, we come from the same background, we come from the same experiences, but we are two different individuals. So if they don't want to hold a book and read, it's still okay. Uh, we have audiobooks. If they want to,
Hmm.
we have audiobooks. People need not hold the book in their hand and read. Audiobooks is also one probable answer for tech savvy
For them.
generation. As long
Yeah.
as they are hearing, as long as they are getting stories, as long as they are getting information, it doesn't matter where they are getting
Yeah,
from.
they're again.
It can be through a video, it can be through an audio book, or it can be through the circles they are involved in, or it can be through a book. Of course, book reading is a wonderful habit. Once we, cultivate that, it will stay with us for a longer time. Having said that,
Hmm.
each child is different. So if a child is not interested in reading, you cannot just force them to read. So look for other options like audiobooks. There are now toys like, radio kind of instruments which will tell the story. You just have to, switch it on and it will tell the stories to your children. So there are so many other options to introduce children to the habit of reading and storytelling. I think that can be explored.
Yeah, story, I agree with that because every child loves the story, no matter what. But they once you start doing that and then see their reaction, how much
Mhm.
interest they are showing. I'm sure no child is born with this thing of mobiles and televisions and everything. Everyone is born with this curiosity to hear the stories. I think
Yes.
everyone is born with that, but this digital era is what is making children just go and run for the mobiles or televisions and everything, but everyone is naturally born with the curiosity
See, there is
of reading
nothing
the
wrong in
stories.
using mobiles and television as long as they are using it for the right purpose. I mean, you cannot take away a phone. I mean, you cannot take away something from this generation, which is so much part of their life, especially with children who are used to online classes. We asked them to sit in front of computer for last 2 years during COVID, and now all of a sudden, if we are trying to snatch away the computer, it's not going to work. We have to work our way through. It's okay if they are using phones, but as I said, if as long as they are using it for the right purpose, in within
True.
the limited exposure time, I think it is still fine.
Then it is well fine. My personal experience and my personal point of view is that Instagram reels and everything is fine because these days even reels can teach us a lot. There are positive messages
Exactly,
even
exactly.
there. no doubt. But for me personally, the richness and the classiness in the reading and holding a book and actually
Correct.
reading it, nothing
True.
is like
True.
compares that for me at least. So
To
yeah,
try at
everyone.
least.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And we were discussing the book Story Through My Eyes. This is the book that we were discussing right now, the second chapter from the book. And I have given the Amazon link in the bio of our page. So you can visit Amazon and you can just check out this book. And thank you so much, everyone who joined. And thank you so much, ma'am, for this first interview, for saying yes to it. I really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you for making it such an easy and wonderful conversation. I would also like to thank all of them who joined this interview, and all the best for the all future interviews that is planned up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.